Hey addicts, welcome back to another addiction prescription. This time I'm very excited because this will be the first addiction prescription that we do over a game, which I want to jump right into talking about this game, which is GreedFall. You guys may have heard of it. I think it came out earlier this month or maybe late last month, but it has been a game that really surprised me, and I've ended up really liking it. So we're going to talk about this. So if you guys don't know, this is a RPG that's kind of like a mixture of like fantasy and I guess you could say like historical fiction. It kind of has this colonial backdrop of like, you know, colonial America, and it's got fantasy elements with like spells and mythical creatures and the like, but it's just a really unique setting for this. But one of the things I think that makes it a standout to me is just like the writing in it. I'll be honest in saying that I used to play a lot of RPGs, but I've kind of fallen off in the last few years because I just feel like they haven't been providing what an RPG should. And so that's why I didn't have much high hopes for this, but I wanted to highlight it because yeah, I think it hits the marks of what all RPGs should. So, with that being said, I am not going to go into like as much detail as I would like to, because at this point in time, I've only played about 2/3 of the game. So I'm well over probably like halfway, but since I haven't seen like the very end of it, that's why I don't want to do like my set deal. It's just more like an impressions video. And to kind of like spread the word out, because I don't know when I'd get to a full review. But anyway, I just wanted to highlight a few of the things in here that I thought was really cool. So something that you know, like I mentioned, the writing, it really has some like unexpected like twists and kind of like just adding more depth. And it's not like a you know, you take it as you see it type of game in terms of like the story and also like the characters and the factions. Because it has kind of this like period piece, I think a lot of people might look at it as, you know, it's kind of like a Cowboys versus Indians approach, and you know, there's only going to be like one of two avenues that the story is going to lead into, you know, and both of it's going to be, you know, dealing with conflict of the natives, which yes, you do get those, and they do touch on those, I guess, more obvious points, but they do a really good job of adding variety and just like a level of realism, I think, in terms of how varied people are in the world, kind of giving it a really believable atmosphere. And not only that, but making it very intriguing to dive in and learn more about these different factions and exactly, you know, who you're going to side with or what side you're going to land on. So that's one thing I've really liked. Another thing that's a real big appeal to me about this game is it's set up much like older RPGs. So if you've played like, you know, the first like KOTOR games, like you know, Knights of the Old Republic, or if you've played some like BioWare's early titles, like Dragon Age. So if you've played Dragon Age, like Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age 2, the setup of the game is very similar to that. You know, it has certain sections that the map are divided into, I guess you could call them like levels, and you go to each one, and you know, you have this new set of you know, factions or quests in each of those areas. So it has a pretty good differentiating of, or I guess I should say, variety of environments. So the whole game does take place on an island for the most part. There is at least one area in the prologue that's different, but the other thing that I think is, you know, also a very big part of RPGs is the leveling system and the class system. So and it's actually really nice because it is kind of like a mix of styles. It does have a more traditional like class system that you can pick into, but it's a little bit more open to where if you do want to play the more I guess you could say balanced approach, so it's not as free as like I guess what some people would call like the Skyrim leveling, where you can be great at everything. I think eventually you might be able to pull that off, because I don't believe there's a level cap in this game, but it is very heavily you know, kind of incentivizing you to play a certain style that you choose very early on. They have 3 different classes that you can pick from. Each one focuses on like 2 different skills and abilities. And, with your leveling, you get points and you can go into those skill trees. You're not restricted from putting them in other skill trees that don't correlate with your class, but because of, whatever class system you do pick, you will have a better advantage in those, not only a head start, but also like better damage and stats. So it is something like really early on you can really experiment and you won't really notice much difference, but especially once you get onto the island, you get into maybe like, level 10 or something like that, you're going to start noticing that like, oh boy, I need, to be more wise about my points. And I really do like that. They do have leniencies, like I said, to kind of balance it out. So if you figure out that, you pick this class and you're like, I don't like this class at all, they do have these, I think they're called like memory points or whatever. You get them, I believe, every like 4 levels, and you can actually switch your class and reassign all of your points. So there is ways to, kind of change things up without, restarting completely. Like I said, the characters in it are pretty great. I would say, they're not the best, mind you, out of an RPG that I've seen, but they are kind of a breath of fresh air to me since I haven't seen this in a while. So like a lot of the companions, I feel like, do have that more lifelike dynamic that I mentioned before, where you may meet one and you'll be like, I don't like this guy at all. And then you'll do maybe you'll spend some more time with him or do some quests, because that is another big thing about the game is your companions. It is a party-based game, so that's kind of the reason why I said it's more like Knights of the Old Republic. So each one has different play styles that are specific to them, so it kind of, incentivizes you to change out your party as need be. But when you get to know these characters, like you'll see, later on, like, oh, you kind of see where they're coming from, or you kind of get a different vibe. They kind of warm up to you in a sense, you kind of warm up to them. And I really do like that approach, because in some RPGs I've seen, it's kind of like clear cut and dry, like what the personality of the companion is. It's like, oh, they're like the scientists and they're like really open to people, da da da, and and they just like stay that way. That's probably a poor example, but I think if you've played enough RPGs, you can kind of understand what I'm saying. Like the companion doesn't really change necessarily. He just gets to like you better. And in this, I think it is a little bit different. Like, yes, they do like you more, and vice versa, as you do more quests for them, but you do kind of see a different side to the companion, and they're not maybe necessarily the same person as when you started, or when you first got them into your party. So I thought that was a cool thing. Now, the gameplay is a little less polished than the rest of the game. You can definitely tell that they focused on story as their main thing in their quests, which I think they do a pretty good job of that. There's not terrible many options for you for each quest, but it does give you several avenues to kind of choose what you want. And I'll say in the sense of like how you want to approach the mission, whether it's stealth or full-on approach or a diplomatic approach. Not all the time. It is a little bit restricting, but I think the writing of the quest kind of help up for like the lack of choosing big options. At least I haven't gotten to that point yet in the story. But the gameplay though does feel I don't know, like honestly I like it. Some people I've heard describe it as janky, but I think it just kind of feels retro, it kind of feels like an older RPG, and it's, I kind of have described this to some people before, where in some more like bigger titles like AAA games, like they just go like the extra mile of making a game really smooth and feel really nice to control. And in this one, it's kind of like, you're just left to do a lot of that stuff on yourself. It's, for lack of a better term, less automated. So, it's just something that's just, like, you can take it as it is. If you kind of see it as, or you might see it as feeling as like an older or like last gen title. but it's not full priced anyway. I think when I first bought this it was $40, so it might have dropped since then, but $40 I think is a really worthwhile approach for it. The other thing I forgot to mention on the gameplay is it does have a strategic system or way of playing, so you can play it kind of like a Dragon Age or Final Fantasy, where it slows down time, or I'm sorry, it stops time, and you can choose what abilities to press and play it more as like a strategy game, or you can play it like, you know, just like a more modern RPG or action game, and have it all in real time. So yeah, that's basically the bare bones of it. There's a lot more I would like to dive in and talk about more in depth, but I will save that probably for when we do, or if I get to a full review. It'll probably be a while, so that's why I wanted to do this video and just kind of get the word out, because honestly I was really thankful for this game, because I was looking forward to playing the Outer Worlds. That's another one I was stoked to, you know, or like looking forward to playing, because it's from Obsidian and I love them. But this game really kind of revitalized my, I guess, enthusiasm for RPGs, because I was like kind of worried I wasn't going to be able to get into the Outer Worlds, because just haven't had a good RPG, so I haven't been playing many lately. But this one definitely, I think, is worth picking up, especially if you're an RPG fan. I think it's even, honestly, it's a little bit better than some of the last few I've played that look a lot nicer than this or have like a bigger budget. So I just keep in mind, you know, it's more of like a AA game. It's not got as big a budget, but I will say it definitely blows you away after you start playing the game and seeing just how much they put into it. There's a lot of customization, both for like your weapons and armor, and in your leveling as well. So with that being said, guys, that will conclude this addiction prescription, and I hope you guys can pick up GreedFall, because it is a really fun game. So I'll just talk to you later, guys, and peace, addicts.